Spence fight. It's 25th today, right? I think the fight's on the 21st, because I saw a video online saying 3 weeks to go, but I don't think it's 3 weeks. I'm sure it's, 7, 14, 21. That would be 3 weeks plus 5 days. So, yeah, I suppose it's just under 4 weeks until this fight happens. So, continuing from the last video I did, I had a question from one of you asking me to talk about corruption and fair judging. So obviously there's not much I can do about that. I can speak on it a little bit. So yeah, I have to be honest, it has crossed my mind as well. I am worried that if the fight's really close and Pacquiao clearly does win it on points, that they might not give it to him, they might give it to Spence. It's got nothing to do with Errol Spence. It's just because we've seen so much, well, we've seen a lot of corruption, so much bad scoring in America and in the UK, but especially in America. And you know what's strange? Usually, like pound for pound fighters, the top guys who bring in all the money, they very rarely get cheated. It's more fighters that go up against them. But in Pacquiao's case, it's been different. Some of the robberies that I've seen have been terrible. Now, this is no knock on Timothy Bradley, because as I said in my video, I really like him as a person and I admired him as a fighter. He was a brilliant fighter. But he didn't win that first fight. You know, he gave Pacquiao a good fight, but he didn't win the fight in my recollection, and so many people are saying the same. And I remember thinking, I just couldn't believe that they didn't give it to Pacquiao. You know, why wouldn't they give it to someone who was, you know, a legend of the sport and bringing so much good attention to the sport? So that's beyond me. And then when they ripped him off from Australia with Jeff Horn, that was just disgraceful. So I would hate to see that in this fight. Listen, if Spence wins, we want him to win because he deserved to win and he was the clear winner. I can live with that. I think, like you said, fair is fair. We don't want any favouritism on either side. Well, I personally want a fair fight. I wouldn't like Pacquiao to lose the fight and then be given the fight when he's clearly not won the fight. So fairness, especially in these big fights, it should be done, but you never know. That there is a possibility. That's why when people are saying it's going to be a close fight and they think Pacquiao will win on a split decision, I'm like you, I have my doubts because of past corruption and Pacquiao being on some bad, I'm not going to exaggerate, but a couple of bad decisions, especially with the first Timothy Bradley fight. And it kind of proved that he didn't win that first fight because they had 2 more fights and Pacquiao won them convincingly. But it does happen in boxing, unfortunately, and I just pray that it doesn't happen in this fight, because I've got to be honest, in the Thurman fight, I clearly thought Pacquiao won that, even though Thurman did start coming back down the stretch, but he didn't win enough rounds to, you know, to make it an even fight. But when they were doing the scoring at the time, I remember being quite nervous and worried that they might give it to Thurman because of so much bad judging. So it is a possibility, unfortunately, going into this fight, but nothing to do with Errol Spence. He's a great champion and a fair person. So I'm assuming you're not on about Errol Spence personally. You're talking about the judging and the corruption, because sometimes you've got to think like this, right? Business-wise, I don't know all the ins and outs. I'm just using common sense. Pacquiao's, you know, on his way out the sport. Errol Spence is still prime, and obviously that big fight that we all want to see with Errol Spence and Crawford. You know, if he does lose to Pacquiao, then where does it leave that fight? I'm not saying that that fight can't happen. A lot of people will be interested in it, but you'd have to say if he does lose to Pacquiao, you can't help it. This is the way the business and, you know, in the minds of the fans and how we value fights, it does make that fight less appealing. It'll still be appealing, but if Pacquiao beats Errol Spence, then, you know, if Errol Spence beats Pacquiao, then of course it immediately makes the Crawford fight more attractive and more bigger. So on the basis of that, I hope Pacquiao doesn't get robbed. If he does win the fight clearly on points, or if it's close, but Pacquiao should get the decision. And I would want the same fairness for any fighter in Errol Spence's. But look, maybe it ain't going to come to that. Maybe there's going to be a knockout and maybe there'll be a clear winner. But you never know, it could be a draw, you just don't know. So that's all really I can speak on. I'm not a judge. I don't know every ins and outs like most of you. I just know what I see, but I've seen bad decisions. I mean, like that recent decision with Charlo and sorry, I forgot the guy's name for a second. He didn't win that fight, you know. I didn't think that was a draw. I thought Charlo lost that. I thought the guy definitely won. Charlo definitely had some good rounds, and he really hurt the guy. But you know, I think they've got to make up their mind, these judges in boxing. How do you score fights? Because if we're scoring fights the way it is in the rule book, round by round, based on points, then why are you going to give it a draw because a fighter has some really good rounds where he almost looks like he's going to knock the opponent out, but at the end of the day, the guy didn't get knocked out, and he won way more rounds, I thought, than Charlo. He had a much bigger league, although yeah, he definitely had some great moments, and yes, you know, you can say Charlo definitely hurt the guy badly twice, and he hurt Charlo once. But the truth of the matter is, when you score it round by round, Charlo didn't win that fight. If you're scoring it on that basis, but if you're scoring the fight like a street fight, like who hurts who more, then you'd give the fight to Charlo because he hurt that guy more than the guy hurt him. But that's not the way boxing is scored, in my understanding, from the Queensberry rules. So they need to make up their mind. But it's a difficult one because sometimes people see it different. But I think we know when someone's won and when they've been on the end of a bad decision. A bit like years ago, I'll have to watch that fight again when De La Hoya, I thought De La Hoya got robbed a lot in his fights. I thought he beat Trinidad. Obviously De La Hoya had a tendency to do really well, build up a lot of rounds, and then at the end kind of fade a little bit, and that's why it kind of went against him. But I still don't think that qualifies. If you win 7 or 8 rounds and then you lose 4 rounds, you shouldn't lose the fight. But look, that's just my opinion. But let me know what you guys think below. So back to the fight, what other things are there? Yeah, really varied opinions. I had a couple of people message me on, I don't go on Facebook much, but a few people messaged me saying, Johnny, do you really think Pacquiao can win? I wish I had your optimism. And I'm like, yeah, I really do think he can win. I wouldn't say it otherwise. Obviously, there's a good chance that Spence can win as well, but I do think Pacquiao can win because of his... well, some people are saying this. Some of you said in the box below, you know, Errol's style is all wrong for Pacquiao. But then many people are saying Pacquiao's style is all wrong for Errol's. I think if there was ever a fight where styles made fights, this is a fight where styles is going to make the fight and it's going to determine who wins, because we can go into age, we've already done that conversation. We can go into youth, Errol Spence, we can go into size, strength. Errol's really strong physically, and he's got youth on his side, and he's in his prime, and we still feel like he can even be more in his prime. He's still priming, if that makes sense. But when you're looking at footwork, speed, like Freddie Roach said it, we can see it. Pacquiao is a lot quicker, even at his age. You know, the Pacquiao that fought Thurman is far more faster at moving in and out and frame combinations than Errol Spence is. You know, judging Spence on his last fight with Danny Garcia. Now, of course, obviously, speed doesn't always win fights. We know that in boxing. It's not as easy as that. Just because someone's faster, it doesn't always mean that they're going to win. Timing beats speed, and you know, you've seen fighters do that. You've seen Marquez time Pacquiao. But in a lot of the cases, when you've got the speed of Manny Pacquiao and that aggressiveness and that ferociousness and that relentlessness, then it usually does win, because we're talking about someone like many of the boxers say, you can't replicate Pacquiao. There's no one that fights like that. No one in the sport. You can't even think of one person and say, oh yeah, he fights like Manny or a bit. I can't think of one person. If any of you know, let me know in the box below if there's anyone in the sport of boxing right now who fights like Pacquiao, who has that style. No one does. He's got a completely unorthodox style. You know, there are some classic fundamentals in there, but he's got his own style, you know, with the in and out, the busyness. He's like a busy bee, and he has improved over the years as well, and that's an interesting one as well. People have said, it's just hearsay, that Manny's got a better defence than Errol. And I had to think about that. I thought, that's probably true, seeing the last few fights. Because back in the day when Pacquiao was at the lighter weights, you know, when he used to fight Barrera, Morales, his defence weren't brilliant. He didn't really care. It was more, he would take 2 shots to land his 4, and he would win like that. But as he got older, and I'm sure it was down to Freddie Roach and his team, you could see Roach started teaching him how to be more defensive, and he really got good with his defence. And by the time, probably a bit before, but I really noticed it when he fought Miguel Cotto, and he started doing that, you know, covering up and blocking shots, and he was just a lot more intelligent and slipping, and there was a lot more, you know, there was a lot more head movement, and the hands were up more, and he was clever. And I saw that in the Keith Thurman fight. But being honest as well, both Errol Spence and Manny Pacquiao get hit. You know, we have to be honest about that. As great as they are, they're not unhittable. So that's what makes this fight so interesting. And it's funny, innit? In every fight, right, despite all of the evidence and the continuous onslaught that Pacquiao brings on everyone he fights, pretty much everyone, everyone does it. We still doubt, well, can he really hurt this guy though? You know, we do it. We said it with De La Hoya, he's too big, and then he hurt De La Hoya. Well, can he help Miguel Cotto? Miguel Cotto is a huge welterweight, he's strong, and he hurt him. Oh, I'm not sure, can he hurt? I'm telling you, man, if he lands clean on Errol Spence, he will hurt him. I'll be very surprised if he catches Errol flush on the jaw and Errol just bounces it off and like nothing hit him. But, you know, we also know, see, I could be wrong, but I can't see Errol Spence hurting Manny with a single shot. I can see him hurting him with an accumulation of shots as the rounds go on. But then again, you don't often really see Manny get beaten up, hardly ever, or hurt. The only time we can think is obviously that brutal knockout by Marquez. But look, we put that down to a great shot. You know, they fought many times, and Pacquiao won more of the fights out of the 2 fights. He was the better fighter. He was more consistent over those fights. So excluding that knockout, I can't remember really when you see Pacquiao get hit and hurt and then he's afraid, and it doesn't really happen. It's usually always him, or if he is met with someone that can compete with him like Thurman did, he just seems to go to that another level, and it's too much for them. So as we're getting closer now, it's getting more interesting. Opinions are divided. Obviously, it's human nature, people contradict themselves a bit. I've probably done it a little bit as fights get closer. People start having doubts or changing their mind, but I'm still sticking with Pacquiao for the win. But I am thinking it's going to be... But in my mind, again, I could be wrong, I really feel like if Pacquiao's going to win this, it can't really be that close, because he might not get it on the scorecards. They might not give it to him. Which is strange. It's strange. I feel like he has to win this fight clearly, and he might even have to stop Spence or knock him out, which I know in a lot of people's minds is unlikely based on, you know, Spence's all of his fights that he's not been knocked out. But we'll just have to see. Hopefully, Pacquiao has still got it at this age. He can still. He's got, even if he's got one more in him, you know, go out with a bang. I hope he wins. But listen, if Errol Spence wins fair and square, I'll be the first to say no excuses. You've got to give him credit. And I really like Errol Spence anyway. I can see, I've been a fan of him ever since my brother told me about him. He told me about him. He saw Errol Spence against Kell Brook live, and my brother was a big fan of Errol Spence, and then I watched him and thought, this guy's brilliant. But of course, I'm not going to have him over Manny because he's my favourite fighter of all time. So I want Manny to win with every bit of my heart. So hopefully he's going to win. But if he doesn't, then oh well, you just have to accept it and say, look, Pacquiao's still a legend. He's still one of the greatest fighters of all time. In my opinion, the greatest. But if some don't agree on that, I think everyone would agree that he's definitely one of the greatest of all time, and his achievements say that. You can't really deny that unless you're just being a hater, or you don't want to accept reality. So we don't want him to lose, But listen, if he loses, it happens. It's boxing. You know, age does catch up with you eventually. You can't win forever. And he's achieved so... No one's going to do what he's done. He's achieved more. I mean, he could have retired after the De La Hoya Cotto fight and he'd been, like a lot of you said, he's already a legend. So to go on and just keep winning, lose, come back, win titles, different weight divisions, to still be at this level, to have just beaten, you know, even to beat Adrian Broner, who's 30, a 4-weight world champion. People don't really talk about that. It's an amazing accomplishment. And then to go in and beat Keith Thurman and to put on a fight like that, at that magnitude, where we're still talking about it like it was last week and it was 2 years ago. That's how powerful his fights are and the impression that he makes. So I'm excited for this fight, and I'm going to be nervous, as I always am on the nights. It's kind of like, I enjoy it, but I hate going through the nerves, but I kind of love it as well, because it's that adrenaline. And I've been the first to admit, as much as I'm saying my opinion, how I think it's going to go, I really don't know until the bell goes. I don't think any of us really does, but we've got an idea of the tactics. But yeah, like Roach said, I don't know if it's a ploy, if there's a trick, but he did say Pacquiao's tactics are to be in and out, not stay in the pocket long, because if you stay in the pocket with Errol Spence, he loves that. In the middle of the ring on the ropes, he would just hammer away at your body. But I'll be interested to see at some point, if it happens, if they both get into an exchange and they go toe to toe, who will get the better out of that exchange? Will Pacquiao be able to cope with the weight of Errol's shots and the strength? And will Errol Spence be able to cope with Pacquiao's dynamite, iron-fisted punch power and speed and relentlessness? Because it's all good and well being stronger. If you've got more of a thud, because you're the bigger man like Errol has, he's a brilliant puncher. But if you've got someone like Pacquiao who's lightning and dynamite, metal, not literally, but you know, like hands of stone, then it's interesting to see who's going to come out on top with that. Or will it be more of a cagey fight to begin with? Will they be more defensive and cute? I don't know, because we've seen Pacquiao in some fights where he can box like that, which is a great fighter. He can change it and mix it up, and you don't, like, you kind of know what you're going to get with Pacquiao. You know you're going to get excitement and electricity, but sometimes you don't know what you're going to get. He can be more mediocre. He can be so aggressive, and I didn't expect him to be that aggressive in the Thurman fight and to drop him so quick. I thought that would have came maybe at the latter stages of the fight. So yeah, you know, this is what we do before a fight. We talk about it. We disagree, hopefully respectfully, and then we see what's going to happen. But yeah, please God, I hope there's I hope it's fair judging on both sides. I hope there's no cheating, no corruption. That's all we can hope for. And hope the best man wins, and I hope it's Pacquiao. But like I said, if it's not and Errol wins fair and square, you just got to give him credit. And then Pacquiao goes off, hopefully retires and enjoys his life. It will never be forgotten. And then we'll see where Errol will go. Obviously, fight that we all want to see other than this. Got to see Errol Spence Crawford. And if that does happen, that'll be another video I can talk about. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it, all right? So let me know in your box below any other things you want to talk about. As I said, I promised, I've stuck to my challenge that I will do videos all the way up until the Errol Spence Pacquiao fight, and I've stuck to my word. I've been consistent with these videos, and I've really enjoyed it actually. Doing these videos, even though this is a side note for some of my followers, it's actually given me more confidence with speaking, because obviously I don't usually speak about boxing on this channel, but talking about something different and new and challenging myself and people challenging me, because boxing is one of those sports that people are so critical, they've got their opinions, so they're going to criticise you. People have criticised me and it hasn't affected me. I didn't think it would, but there's also been a lot of people that I've got along with, and it's been great. It's been challenging in a very positive way, and it's I've enjoyed it a lot more than I thought. And I didn't plan all this. I had no plans to do so many videos. I only planned one video on this channel. I was never going to talk about boxing really, other than maybe Tyson Fury against Joshua Wilder, and maybe just one video on Pacquiao, and that was it. And I got such a great response and encouragement, and people, it just happened naturally. So some things you can't plan, they just fall into place. So any of you out there that are thinking about doing your own channel, face your fears and do it if you want to do it and you enjoy it, because you never know where it's going to lead you. And that goes for any, doesn't have to be boxing or Manny Pacquiao that you want to talk about, anything that you want to talk about, because my channel is all about getting over your social fears, and doing videos is a part of that, and becoming fearless. And it's weird how it connects, because Pacquiao, didn't he? And I mean, I came up with Become Fearless not because of Pacquiao, but they used to wear the banner Fearless. I used to love that. And that's my whole attitude on this channel, at least to encourage all of us, because we've all got fears, everyone. None of us are perfect, so become fearless and do what it is that you want to do. Anyway, I'll talk to you soon about the boxing. We're getting closer now. Any more questions? I've answered that one about the judging, and we'll talk boxing soon. Become fearless, bye.